Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the first installment of something new on my channel, Lord of the Rings lore. Most of what I do is about writing in some form or fashion, and so why not examine the universe of one of the best writers in history and see a bit of what Tolkien did. Not only that, but not even Tolkien's IP is safe from being butchered, with Rings of Power seeing to that. So if you want the real lowdown on the world of Arda, then this playlist will aim to give you the quick version of it to get you started. After all, there's no substitute for reading the works yourself, but these videos will aim to give you some context to get you going. And where better to start than at the beginning of everything? Before the world existed, there was one being, Eru Iluvatar, the singular god of Tolkien's mythos. From his creation, all life in Middle-earth was brought into being through the flame imperishable, his power of creation. Eru is all-powerful and all-knowing, but despite this, he largely leaves the world to function as it will, as all events will sooner or later fall into his grand design. Forces like Sauron, or his master before him, Morgoth, may mar or delay his plan for the world, but they cannot truly stop it. The first beings that Eru brought into existence were the Ainur. These beings were divided into two distinct categories, the Valar and the Maiar. If Eru is God with a capital G, then the Valar are gods with a lowercase 1. The Valar were 15 in number, though one, Melkor, who later became Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, is no longer counted among their number. But he will need his own video in the future. Each of these Valar had a distinct role to play. Manwë was their king, and closest to the mind of Eru. He has dominion over the air and winds. Varda was his wife, and queen of the Valar, and is also known as Elbereth Gilthoniel, a name which strikes fear and dismay into the forces of both Dark Lords. She was known as the Lady of the Stars. Ulmo was the Lord of Waters, and was the friendliest to the races that came later. He seldom appeared with his brethren, except in extreme need. Aule was the smith of the Valar, and had governance over rock, metal, and crafting. He was directly responsible for the dwarves coming into being, but that's a story for another video. Yavanna was his wife, and she was responsible for plant life and all things that grew from the earth. Like her husband, she too was the cause for another race coming into being, the Ents. Nienna was the lady of grief and sorrow, but also of pity and courage. It is through her teachings that knowledge of how to endure hardship and loss exists. Orome was the huntsman of the Valar. He was known for his great wrath, and for hunting all manner of evil creatures brought into being by Morgoth. Vanna was his wife, and she was called the Ever-Young. She was the younger sister of Yavanna, and often aided her older sibling in her work. Mandos was the doomsman of the Valar, and presided over the halls named after him, where beings who died were called to. What happened to those spirits varied by race, but he was the one who judged them. Vaire was wed to him, and was responsible for weaving the story of the world, and thanks to her, every event is recorded in the halls of Mandos. Este had the power to heal all hurts and weariness, and she was always clad in grey. Urmo was her husband, and was responsible for dreams and visions. Through these, he would guide the elves. Tulkas was the champion of the Valar, and was the strongest and fastest of their number. He wielded no weapon, nor rode any mount, and would laugh as he fought, which he was fond of doing. Nessa was his wife, and was known for her dancing. The final Valar was Melkor, who later became Morgoth, who descended into evil and became the first Dark Lord. These were the Valar. And the Maiar were innumerable spirits that, while lesser than the Valar, were greater than those of elves, men, and dwarves. Each of them is associated with at least one of the Valar, like Sauron was for Aule. Yes, Sauron, Gandalf, and the Balrogs were Maiar spirits. Many mistake Gandalf for being a man, but that isn't so. but I'll cover the wizards in the future. After Eru brought these beings into creation, they partook in the music of the Ainur. Through this, they glimpsed portions of his vision for the world, though not in its entirety, and even if they had all pooled their knowledge, they would not have been able to see it all. This music began to shape the world, but one, Melkor, wished to make his own design for the world and disrupted the music. Eru had given the Valar permission to add their own themes to the music, but Melkor's clashed with Eru's, wanting a greater role for himself. Eru halted the music, and then they began again. But Melkor caused discord within the theme, and many of the Maiar began to stop singing in dismay, or else join Melkor's theme in confusion. Eru again stopped the music, this time more stern than before. For a third time, they took up the music again, and while Morgoth tried once again to corrupt it with his own designs, Eru took control of the theme and drowned it out. As they completed the song, the world came into being, and the Ainur moved to inhabit it. The Valar and Maiar can create bodies for themselves, but unlike elves, men, dwarves, and other beings, they do not need to inhabit a body. Their taking a physical form is often compared to wearing clothes, separate from them in that they can wear or cast them aside as they see fit. These beings primarily exist in the unseen world, the plane upon which spirits reside. This is why those who wore the One Ring became invisible, as they were transported mostly to the unseen world. Those that do great evil will, however, find that they can no longer change their form, and become increasingly attached to it, as was the case with Sauron and his master Morgoth. Their bodies can be killed like any other, but death for them holds a much different meaning than for you or I. The Valar continued to shape the world from within, though Melkor undid much of their work. He would cause great evil, and his creations and servants would continue to do so long after his defeat. It is said that at the end of the world, there will be a second music to create a new world, but this time, the other beings will participate as well. Those spirits of the children of Iluvatar will participate as well, for that is the title given to elves, men, and eventually dwarves. The Valar dwell within Valinor, and all elves must now journey there, or else fade away into spirits. Other races are not permitted or capable of journeying there unless under special circumstances. Valinor is called the Undying Lands, not because those who live there are guaranteed to live forever, but because they are either Ainur or elves, who do not die of old age. This means that the Ring-Bearers, Frodo, Bilbo, and Sam, did not live eternally upon being granted access to Valinor, but that they could instead live out the remainder of their lives unburdened by the damage that the One Ring did to their spirits. Valinor used to exist as an island like any other, but after the downfall of Númenor, Eru intervened directly, one of the few times he did so, and the world was changed from flat to round, and Valinor made separate from it, accessible only by the straight road, which the elven ships used to reach it afterwards. It was called thus because it did not follow the curvature of the world, rather maintained the previous path where the seas once were. The straight road would not normally allow anyone other than elves to access it, unless granted permission by the Valar. After seeing what their power caused during the War of Wrath, the Valar keep a mostly hands-off approach in Middle-earth. They did send the wizards to help combat Sauron through counsel and guidance in the Third Age, but they do not intervene directly. Eru intervenes even less, as everything will play into his plan, given time. One notable exception, though, was when he returned Gandalf to life in Middle-earth as Gandalf the White. But that concludes this first installment of Lord of the Rings lore. More will come in the future. But what do you think about Eru, the Valar, and the Maiar? Do you believe that they should have been more involved, or would that take away from the value the other races had in their accomplishments? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a like on this video if you're so inclined, and subscribe to see more. I would like to thank you for watching, and may you all have a weapon in each hand.